Hello, so this is going to be a video about how I cut up t-shirts and make my workout tank tops because I have maybe two workout shirts that I bought as tank tops and the rest of them are either old t-shirts or t-shirts I bought from Goodwill and transformed into workout tank tops, and I do this for a couple reasons. One is I prefer to work out in a tank top rather than a t-shirt because I just feel like my arms are really constricted when I have sleeves. And I also don't like the way that really long shirts look on me when I'm working out. And I find it a lot easier for me to just cut them up myself because then you get a super custom fit and you get to decide if you want it loose at the bottom or tight, if you want to tie it in the back, on the sides. So we're going to go through all that. I have a couple different methods that I use when I cut up a t-shirt and completely destroy it into a masterpiece. So I'm going to show you a few pictures in a minute of different ways you can do it, and then I'm going to actually cut a shirt with you and take you step by step through the process because it is one of those things that I could write about and explain, or I can show you, and I just feel like showing you is way easier. And even me, I've cut up a million shirts now, but I still have to make a cut, put it on, see where it fits, take it off, and go and recut. So I'll try and take you through that whole process as streamlined as I can, but I've never made a video before, and I'm doing this all by myself, so we'll see how this goes. I will also start off by saying that the type of t-shirt you start with does make a difference from my experience. I think it's easier if you start with a bigger shirt. The shirts that have turned out the best for me have been men's larges, and I'm usually just a regular women's medium or women's small sometimes. So I think the bigger the shirt, the better, but you also don't want it to be too large because then you end up super baggy, a lot of bunching, and it's not cute. So this is the shirt we're gonna do today. It is a women's medium, and the material of it is a really easy to cut one. It's that kind of soft t-shirt, not super thick cotton. This is one that I've done, and it is not that same material, but it was so easy to cut. It's just that really classic t-shirt feel, a little rougher, and this was just from Goodwill. Your scissors don't mean shit. They don't make a difference because these are the ones I use. They're regular, they're not sewing scissors, they're super old craft scissors. I know it would be easier to cut with fabric scissors or sewing scissors, but I don't have them, and I'm not going to go out and buy them so that I can tear up t-shirts. That might not work anyway. So regular old scissors will do just fine. I cut mine on top of my bed. I'll try and tell you other little tips along the way, but there's nothing really special to the setup process other than you need a pair of scissors, and a bigger shirt is a little easier. I've tried it on a shirt that was small on me to begin with because I was this is too small for me to wear as a t-shirt. Let me try to make it into a tank top, and it sucked. It didn't work because it stayed, it's still gonna stay whatever the torso fit of it is. I'm just done trying to get her to stay out of videos. So bigger but not too big, and if it's tight to begin with, you're not going to be able to change the tightness of a shirt. So I hope that makes sense whenever you are choosing a t-shirt. Also, you'll see too, it doesn't matter what cut the neck is because you're either going to cut the neck or you're going to leave it. So if it's a v-neck, I've made workout shirts from v-necks before. You can leave the v-neck, or if it's already got a weird neckline, we can cut around that. So that is the guidelines for picking whatever shirt you're going to start with. Before you start too, it's a good idea to have in mind what style tank top you're even trying to cut, because I typically like a wider, deeper sleeve hole, but this one, I mean, obviously I didn't cut this, it came like this, has a very narrow armhole. I usually cut further down when I make them because I like them loose and roomy when I'm working out. So go ahead and think about which style you want. You can choose from the pictures that I showed you of different ways I've cut mine, but keep that in mind, and then I'm going to show you what cut style I'm doing for this one and what lines I'm kind of following in my head. So this is the shirt that I'm starting with. It's also a good idea to pick something that has a logo either centered or very narrow, because if you're going to cut right here, sometimes you'll end up cutting through the logo. But for this one, you want to come pretty narrow at the top and then come down kind of at a curve and end pretty low down if you want a deep sleeve hole. You can start by cutting just kind of along the sleeve path and take away as you go. I wouldn't suggest starting like super narrow, because when we cut around the collar, then it's going to be like super, super skinny. So first, we're actually going to cut the collar just so we can get a guideline, and then we'll go back and cut the sleeve part. Huge thing I forgot to say, do not cut the front and the back of the shirt at the same time. So even when you're on the collar, just cut around the front and then go to the back. Don't try to cut both sides all the way through at the same time, or else your front is going to be identical to your back, and no shirt like tank top is made that way. It's obviously more narrow in the back, like a racer back type of thing. If you cut a racer back in the front, I'll let you put the pieces together of how that's going to look. So even on the collar, I'll show you. Like I was saying, I'll show you. I'm just cutting the front around the collar first right here. And I would stay narrow, like stay close to the collar at the beginning. And you can always take off more if you want like a deeper scoop, or even like want to cut a V in it yourself. But you don't want to cut them at the same time. You want to cut just the front and then carry on, and we'll end up in the back by ourselves, not at the same time. So this is what mine looks like after I cut the collar off. You don't need to be super precise here, because 9 times out of 10 we're going to go back and cut lower and then obviously cut deeper and narrower in the back. So as long as you have just kind of a clean cut to start with, as even as you can, that should be good. I also find it easier to cut from upside down. I'm right-handed, so this is like the shirt is upside down, and I'm going to cut the left side of it first. I'm going to start and just make like a little cut right here, and then I'm going to follow kind of just an arc like that, staying pretty close to this, because like I said, we can always take off more, but once you cut too deep in and you've made like a nipple showing tank top, it's too late. Okay, so actually for this first cut, whenever you're cutting just the sleeve to get it off and start making the tank, you can cut the front and the back at the same time, because the back is going to eventually be way more narrow than the front. So it's okay that it's starting wide. You probably won't need to take too much off of this side, but the back we can, and we're going to make more narrow. So the first time you cut, you can cut the front and the back together, but after this we are going to work on the front differently than the back. For the other side, I like to turn it sideways on my bed, so I'm still in the same spot, but I turn the t-shirt sideways. I have this little cut from, it's about even with where the other side is, and I'm just going to do the reverse, sticking to that sleeve line, but kind of an arc, and come up. We're going to do the front and the back at the same time, and then we'll flip it over and cut the back. A couple other side notes as you're cutting. If the shirt starts like bunching up and you cut on top of the bunches, whenever it unbunches, it's going to have a lot of like ridges. So try and keep it as taut as possible while you're cutting. And I should have mentioned this at the beginning. If you're going to be like me and cut it on top of your bed, do not cut your comforter or any blankets underneath. Just saying. Okay, so this is probably the part you need to be the most careful on. I flipped the t-shirt over. Again, it's upside down. I flipped it over, and we're gonna only cut the back this time. But the first cut we make about right here, because that's about how I like my sleeves, like how thick I like them to be, we're gonna cut a little bit on the front and the back, and then we're only gonna cut the back, but we're gonna go in a lot to make it that racer back style that I like. And then once we flip over to the front, we'll have that little incision cut right here, and we'll try and angle that to come back out. So do not cut the front and the back together this time. Again, we're just going to make a small little cut right here. We're going to follow that cut to a deep racer back. And then once we flip it over, it will be cut a little, but only just a little bit down. And so we'll try to angle that back out to the side so that the front is not following that same racer back pattern. Okay, so you can see we did not cut through the front. This is what it looks like after you do that little cut and then follow a deep racer back kind of shape. This is going to be a really deep armpit hole. I went a little low down, so if you want to come a little higher up and not make it so deep, that's just up to you. I do recommend going very, very in and then coming almost straight back instead of trying to make it like gradual. Like you don't need it to be gradual when you come back over to the side, if that makes sense. Oh, okay. So on the other side, I turned the t-shirt sideways and I started from the bottom rather than from the top just because it was easier, like hand placement. So start from the bottom, go in, make that racer back, and then come back out, because once we flip it over, we're going to use that to cut it for the front side. But again, this is only the back side, and I haven't even like finished cutting to the front side yet. So it's still connected. But you can see overall we're starting to get the racer back thing. We're going to go back later and cut a little deeper from the neckline to really give it that tank top back. So this is the piece I just cut off from the front, and that's the back that we already cut. You can see how narrow it is right here, because when I came in on the front, I just went straight out to the side and tried to make it level off with the sleeve we had already cut. I didn't really cut anything past here. Like it probably stopped right about here. So you just want to come in right where that slit was that we made. You can see I was even a little wide of it, but we'll come back and cut that later and fix it. You just don't want to come in because, like I said, you're going to make a nipple showing tank top. Okay, so at this point, after I've cut the neck and the sleeves and then the back, is when I put it on and see like what additional cuts I need to make. So I can already tell that this neckline is just too high for my taste. I like it to be a little more scoopy, and I know that I'm going to have to make adjustments on the back just because I always do. You never get the racer back right on the first time. I am probably going to make this part a little more narrow, but I'm going to go look in the mirror and see what it looks like, and I will keep you updated. So it's actually not bad for a first cut. I usually have to go back and cut 3 or 4 times. Like I said, I know I'm gonna, well, I don't know, now that I see it like from the front, it's not as like high as I'd imagined it. I am definitely gonna go back and do something with the bottom because this just looks kind of like dumb to me, like too long. So I like to either cut the bottom, or I'll show you how I make ties and all kinds of different places. The back of it too is actually not so bad. I said I always have to go back and redo the racer back part, but I kind of like how it turned out on this one. I'm gonna go back and fix the neckline, but I will show you that in a minute too. So the cut that I'm gonna make to make this neckline, the back neckline a little deeper, is probably just follow a little closer to what is on the front. I'm going to try not to take off too much of the sleeve because you don't want to end up with like super narrow sleeves or else they rip, because it is just a t-shirt and there's not going to be like any seaming on it because we're cutting, not sewing, obviously. So I'm going to try and just start about right here and then go in and follow that kind of front neckline. So I just cut the back, which I will turn around and show you in a minute, but I just wanted to show you on the front. This is like a little too wide still for me, so what I'm going to do is kind of just cut it to where it looks a little more like that. So it's probably going to be like maybe a centimeter cut right there, but I actually do, the neckline is fine with me now. I didn't touch it, it just ended up looking better. So this is the back. You can see the neckline's just like a little deeper now that I cut it a little bit. I think I did actually fairly well on the racer back attempt the first time, but you can see why you want it to be like when you make the cut, you want to come out instead of like keeping it narrow, because if you keep it narrow, you're just going further and further down and making a longer and longer armpit hole. So for that racer back, come down and then come back out to the sides. So you can see now that the sleeve is a little more narrow right here. You can also see this little peak right here. I'm going to go back and like snip that off. And also the little like imperfections on this side. That's what happens when you cut through like bunches. I'm going to go back and just try and give that like a straighter edge. We're going to mess with the bottom part and then we're going to be done. Okay, so sleeves are cut, neck is cut, adjustments have been made. It's time to figure out what you want to do with the bottom. I am going to make this one tie in the back, but you can also make it tie on the side. You can do a total like crop top cut like you saw in the black tank top from earlier, or you can make it tie in the front. Cons of tying on the back is that if you do exercises laying down on a bench or on the floor, the knot does like hurt your lower back a little bit. Cons of tying in the front are if you raise your arms up, you can sometimes see your belly button, and tying on the side, you just look like a cheerleader. But I do that too. So it just depends wherever you want to have it tie. All you're going to do is just cut one line straight up. So you don't need to cut like a V or anything. It's just going to be straight up, and then we're going to tie the two sides together, and that's going to be it. Also, a super important time when it is very vital that you only cut one side, because if I cut the front too, I'm going to have to tie in the front and the back. So just cut one side of the shirt. If you're cutting the actual side, then you just obviously are cutting up up a side, so you're not gonna have to make that choice. But if you're cutting the front or the back, only cut the front or the back. And this is about, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches long. I don't know how long my hand is, but it's pretty deep. You can always cut higher, but if you cut too high to start, then you're gonna have to tie super high. It's gonna be super short. So I would suggest starting with maybe 4 or 5 inches and going from there. Okay, so when I tried it on, that slit was way too short because I tied it and it barely changed the length of the shirt. So I'm gonna cut probably 2 more inches up, and then all we're gonna do is tie those ends together just like that and cut off the excess, and we're good to go. So I'm gonna hopefully do this in one cut, one tie, and I will show you the results. Okay, so it ended up working out. This is kind of the length that I like a shirt to be, and it's definitely not too tight. It looks kind of nice in the back too. I'm gonna have to go cut off the excess of that, but we did good. I cut it a little further up and then just tied it sitting there on my bed like in a knot, put it on, and this is the finished product.